Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking, and strap yourselves in because this week I'm looking at the remake of Final Fantasy VII released in April of 2020. If you want to split hairs, I'm technically looking at the PlayStation 5 enhancement Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade, though I won't be going over the added DLC story because the main story is long enough as is and it's only like half of the original story it's based on. To the uninitiated, it may seem weird that I'm starting with the remake of the 7th game in a series as opposed to the beginning, but there's 15, soon to be 16 of these things, and there's a snowball's chance in hell that I'll ever cover them all. But let's rewind to the beginning. Final Fantasy was created by Hironobu Sakaguchi while he was working for Square, a development studio that would go on to merge with Enix to create the much more well-known and recognizable Square Enix. The title represented Sakaguchi's mindset during development as he was going to quit game design if the game wasn't a success, along with the fact that they wanted a title that would be abbreviated as FF because it sounded good in Japanese. So that's why such oxymoronic titles as Final Fantasy XV exist today. The first Final Fantasy was supposed to be the first and last one. Releasing in 1987, not only did Final Fantasy ensure Sakaguchi remained in game development, it reversed Square's fortunes, which we're still seeing the results of today. And when you take heavy inspiration from Hayao Miyazaki, the genius mind behind some of the greatest animated films of all time, including Spirited Away, which until 2020 was the highest grossing film in Japanese history, you're bound to see some success. Anyway, as anyone in Hollywood can tell you, success means sequel, and Final Fantasy II began development almost immediately, and, as would become the norm, it was completely detached from the previous installment. And I don't mean detached in a Persona way where each game tells its own story in the same world. Each game essentially takes place in a whole new world with new horizons to pursue. And that brings us to Final Fantasy VII, released in 1997, which is often regarded as one of, if not the best Final Fantasy game, not to mention one of the greatest RPGs and overall video games in general of all time. This was the first game in the series to use 3D models, but that often gets lost in the two things everyone in the world knows this game for, whether they know it's from this game or not. One of them is the song One Winged Angel, and the other also involves our asymmetrical adversary, but since it's not included in this game, I'll have to save it for the inevitable part 2. Announced in 2015, the remake of Final Fantasy VII would be praised as one of the best games of 2020, though honestly, everyone's standards were a lot lower then. That's not to say that this game is bad though, there's just a lot to it. There's no time to spare, so let me share this whole new world with you and give it everything we've got! Okay, here we go. The game begins with a trained team of tacticians totally trouncing some toughies, and then we're introduced to our main character, Cloud Strife. The other 4 characters are members of an eco-terrorist gang known as Avalanche. You've got Biggs, Wedge, and Jessie, voiced by Erica Lindbeck, who last appeared on the channel as Black Cat in Marvel's Spider-Man, and their leader, Barrett Wallace. This remake switched out the classic turn-based combat of the original for the more modern real-time strategy approach the series had been taking. Cloud can use light and heavy attacks along with switching how he holds his massive sword that would definitely be very ineffective in real life. As time progresses, the active time battle bar will fill up, and when a bar is filled, Cloud can use magic by equipping materia to his sword, a special move, or an item. And by far, my least favorite aspect of this combat is that item usage is heavily restricted. There's also a pressure meter above enemies' heads. If you lay on the attacks, that meter will fill and, when full, stagger the enemy. They'll be stunned and Cloud's attack will do more damage. Anyway, this.
So what's Soldier Boy's deal?
I'll go over what Cloud's whole deal is when I can explain it without introducing like 5 new concepts, but all you need to know right now is that Cloud is a huge bummer. Yeah, in a game with an art style that makes every character both realistic in a way and very expressive, the main character is the least expressive person in the whole thing. At least the villain smiles. I'm not an expert on Final Fantasy VII by any means. I don't even know how the fucking story ends, so don't get too upset if I get things wrong, as I'll be sure to correct them whenever the opportunity arises. But Cloud's general demeanor is a result of his disillusionment with his former life as a soldier and a series of traumatic instances in his past that his brain has suppressed, changed, or ignored. And I get that Cloud's a very interesting and complex protagonist, but if you took a drink every time someone asked Cloud a question and he just completely fucking ignored them, you'd be passed out before the first hour of this game was through. It just makes him come off as a dick, especially since a lot of what made him the way he was isn't revealed in this remake. Remember, this remake is only like the first half of the actual game it's remaking. That's not to say we get nothing, though.
So, you know Tifa, right? It's not really my business, but are you guys close?
Okay, but why did it zoom in right there? Well, I think we'll find the answer to that later, but we'll get a lot more on Tifa in a bit, but for now, all you need to know is that the two of them are childhood friends. Now, you're probably wondering, unless you've played this already, just what the heck are all these characters up to? Well, as I said before, Avalanche are eco-terrorists, and they are currently breaking into a mako reactor. Mako being the lifeblood of the planet, Avalanche doesn't like that the mako is being sucked from the planet by Shinra, the massive company in control of the reactors and basically everything else. Now, let me show you something I don't like.
Should have asked for more money.
So many cutscenes in this game go on for way longer than they should because they just have to show the characters making small, weird noises or random gestures for no fucking reason. It happens all the time. It's hard to notice at first, but with how tedious the game will get, it becomes grating. This is the introduction to playing as Barrett. While Cloud is the main character, the player will be able to manually control any of his teammates in combat, and they each control differently. As you'd expect from the man with a massive gun for an arm, he specializes in ranged attacks to cover the bases that Cloud's melee can't. This complementary pairing comes in handy when priming the bomb to destroy the reactor, as a security bot will attempt to stop them and they have to work together to defeat it. This is the first real boss fight in the game, and it can be very overwhelming if you aren't too experienced with this combat style. Whereas American games operate under the mindset that this could be someone's first game, Japanese games operate under the sink or swim mindset. Unless you're Pokemon, in which case you're told to press the same fucking button 800 times. They defeat the boss and have to escape before the time runs out, and as games tend to do with a timer, everything is placed in your way just to waste your time. But there's more than enough time to escape, and then the president of Shinra orders this man Heidegger to just fucking destroy the whole reactor, leading to a beautiful explosion that makes Avalanche's actions look a lot more extreme and dangerous to the public. This also causes Shinra to issue a state of emergency in sectors 1 and 8 in the city of Midgar, the elevated and technologically advanced city powered by Mako. As he crosses the fragile city, we get to see Cloud's post-traumatic Sephiroth disorder and all the strife it brings him. This is our introduction to the main antagonist, Sephiroth, voiced by none other than motherfucking Superman. Cloud believes he killed Sephiroth, and all Sephiroth has to say is,
"Are you sure about that?"
Well, at least he's gone, so Cloud is free to focus on other things, like a strange girl who definitely won't be important later being attacked by Sandman or something.
You are too weak to save anyone.
Oh great, he's got those omnipotent villain powers to just show up anywhere at any time. We don't learn this girl's name yet, but she gives Cloud a flower that symbolizes the reunion of lovers and, like, I just met you, lady. And then she runs off after also giving Cloud the ability to see those weird dementors attacking her. Cloud escapes Shinra guards by jumping on a train because he's a cool guy, where he's reunited with Avalanche as they blend in with the rest of the passengers. Because I'm sure all these people in suits won't be suspicious of the people wearing armor, carrying weapons, or having a massive gun for an arm. The train takes them to the Sector 7 slums, which highlights the main contrast in this game. The elite and powerful live up above on Midgar, which also saps the lifeblood from the earth that those less wealthy live off of. It's also down here where we're finally introduced to Tifa Lockhart, voiced by Britt Baron, who played Justine and Glow, along with Barrett's daughter Marlene. And I never thought any character would give Clover, Lotus, and Alice a run for their money in the impractical outfits department, but here Tifa is. She leads Cloud to an empty apartment building he can stay at until he gets the rest of the money he was promised, and on the subject of outfits, God, Cloud's outfit is weird, and he sleeps in it. His apartment is right between Tifa's and some guy named Marcos, who has a bad case of turning into Sephiroth. The next day is when we're introduced to a lot of the core elements of the game, like Cloud being able to buy and or find records of every song in the game's soundtrack, buying items, gear, materia, and weapons, improving items, and taking odd jobs to improve his reputation and wallet. This is also the first time Tifa joins the combat, and she's probably my favorite to fight with. She's a lot faster than Cloud, but hits lighter, so the name of her game is multi-hit combos that can rack up damage fast. I always prefer that to the more bulky fighters. I'm not going to go over all the side quests in this game because there are like 26 of the damn things, and almost all of them just boil down to kill these enemies, find these things, or do this one repetitive action over and over again. But despite their boring nature, it's in your best interest to do them all. Anyway, he meets up with Tifa in her apartment where she asks him about what he's been up to, as it's been about 5 years since they last saw each other. All we really get is Cloud saying that being a soldier was nothing like what he expected and he was just working for Shinra. And seeing as how he just helped a group of people destroy valuable Shinra property, it's safe to say he didn't like that too much.
You know what? We should totally celebrate. Let's dress up and hit the town.
Now is not the time for dress. That comes later.
Now's the time to introduce Johnny, voiced by Yuri Lowenthal, last appearing on the channel as the voice of Spider-Man. Crazy to think they made 2 whole Spider-Man games recently and never revealed who's under the mask. Anyway, Johnny is one of the lowlights of this game as he's just a recurring joke that isn't funny. Cloud's reward for saving that asshat is a drink from Tifa's bar. No, not like that. At least, not yet anyway. That's cool and all, but can you make a flaming moai? I can. Anyway, Cloud gets booted out of Avalanche after Barrett gives him the rest of his payments, so he distracts himself by beating up some hoodlums that thought it was a good idea to jump on a dude with the biggest sword since William Wallace. Then he calls it a day.
Welcome home, honey. Took your sweet time. Psych.
Jessie wants Cloud to go to the Sector 7 plate up on Midgar with her that night.
Ooh! Should I slice this up for the road?
And gives him the power to summon a fiery nightmare demon. Jesus, Jessie, alright. That night, while accompanied by Biggs and Wedge, Jessie is still hung up on the reactor explosion being bigger than intended, and she realized she used a bigger blast agent than she was supposed to. But, like, we saw that Shinra was responsible for the massive explosion. I get that the characters don't know that, but wouldn't this be way more interesting if we didn't know it either? Anyway, we're treated with an extended motorcycle combat section, including a boss fight against Roche the Speed Demon, and the light at the end of the tunnel is a kiss from Jessie. Sorry, Jessie, but there isn't enough room for 3 brunettes in this love triangle. Jessie breaks off to steal a smaller blasting agent from a Shinra warehouse. There's a flashback where Cloud says he's going to become a soldier like the war hero Sephiroth and promises to come to Tifa's aid whenever she needs help. And then Biggs, Wedge, and Cloud distract the guards in an elongated fight that includes another Roche fight. They're bailed out by another Ava branch and parachute back to the slums, where Cloud stops by Jessie's house to be paid in full.
Oh, you are so adorable, you know that? You just leave everything to me. It'll be great. Nighty-night. Psych.
You know I know you're not telling the truth, right? The next day, Cloud is awoken when the Dementors attack, and they are referred to as mysterious specters, so I feel like my name for them tells you more. Jessie gets injured, and Cloud accepts the offer to be her substitute on their mission to blow up the next reactor, believing it to be part of his promise to Tifa. Their train ride gets derailed, and they have to venture through the subway while being monitored by Heidegger, the head of public safety, and voiced by John DiMaggio. He has no regard for casualty counts, so you know he's a good head of public safety. But nothing he throws at them stops them from entering Reactor 5, where Cloud has a flash forward, flash back, flash sideways of Tifa dressed as a cowgirl for some reason. I'm sure it made sense to someone on the dev team, and then they set the bomb. Heidegger interrupts their escape by showing them that they are being broadcast on the news, and a clear parody of CNN broadcasting a false news narrative at the behest of the lying government that's blowing an event way out of proportion is something I could say is very realistic, but I'm not saying that. So Shinra is allowing Avalanche to blow up their reactors and then making the fallout worse so that they can turn the public against Avalanche and say they were conspiring with a foreign nation, thus making Shinra the heroes and justifying their decision to declare war on a foreign nation. Yo, Ronnie R, you want to summarize this game's plot so far in one sentence?
Government is the problem.
Also, the president reveals that all soldiers experience advanced cellular degradation, and if that won't kill Cloud, then the Airbuster certainly might. I actually really like this fight, as on the path to it, the player is given the choice to weaken the Airbuster in a number of ways, though he can only do a few of them. It adds a unique layer of strategy you don't see very much. The victory is a Pyrrhic one, as Cloud falls all the way down to the Sector 5 slums and has a vision where he talks to himself before it turns into Sephiroth, because this game has a non-existent relationship with simplicity. He wakes up and is greeted by that flower girl from earlier because the plot demands it, and we finally learn that her name is Aerith Gainsborough, voiced by Brianna White or Strange Rebel Gaming on YouTube. Prepare for a lot of Aerith from this point on because she's more of a central character than Cloud is. Also, for some reason the English translation of the original Final Fantasy VII changed her name to Eris, so I guess we all have lisps now. She talks about how she has a materia orb in her hair bow, and I'm sure that'll never be important. While a good bit of foreshadowing for the 5 people in existence who don't know about one of the most famous moments in video game history, I don't like all these visions Cloud has, since about half of them get paid off in this game, and at the time of this video's release, we're nearly 2 years removed from the release of the game, and there's still no update on part 2. How do you expect people to remember all of these? Their conversation is interrupted by someone named Reno, who is after Aerith, and Cloud reluctantly agrees to become Aerith's bodyguard after she successfully guesses that he's a mercenary. Cloud wins the fight, and the two of them escape the church with help of the Spectre things that were attacking us last we saw them, and as they cross the rooftops, we're told that Reno works for Shinra in a group called the Turks, and they are much like their young counterparts.
Professional bad guys.
Honestly, this rooftop hopping section is one of my favorite moments. Everything has been moving so fast, and this slows things down while allowing us to get attached to Aerith, her personality, and how she bounces off Cloud.
Looked like you knew each other.
Maybe he thought I could be the greatest soldier yet. Don't just run off on your own.
Those the words of a soldier candidate?
So petty. I'm not some princess who needs to be coddled. Shit. Maybe I'll go on ahead and leave you all by your lonesome. Just...
Maybe you shouldn't talk.
My hero.
Never a dull moment with you.
That a compliment?
Not really.
Aerith joins the party with her staff that has great and powerful ranged attacks and healing but non-existent melee attacks. So she's really strong if you use her the right way, which isn't always easy. They arrive in the heart of the Sector 5 slums, where another news report on the reactor bombing introduces us to the director of Shinra's Advanced Weaponry Division, Scarlet, and her not very work-appropriate wardrobe. Cloud returns Aerith to her house, where she convinces him to stay the night, but not before they go out and collect flowers, because they had to turn half a game into a full game somehow. And while Aerith delivers the flowers to an orphanage, Cloud explores the town and rescues some kids from another robe-wearing numbered man that turns into Sephiroth, in case you forgot who the main villain is. A new batch of side quests are available, and then the duo runs into Anime Pitbull. This is Rude, and he's Reno's partner. As you'd expect, he's not too happy that Cloud whooped his boy's ass. They have a fight where Rude flies off before he can be inducted into the Whoop Ass Club, and then returns to Aerith's house, where her mother asks Cloud to leave that night since, as a soldier, he gave up the possibility for a normal life in exchange for more power. This prompts a flashback where Cloud's mother tells him he needs an older and more mature woman in his life, and of the 3 women who have expressed interest in him, that one line eliminates all 3. Tifa's younger, and Cloud is more mature than all of them. Well, except emotionally. Gee, thanks Cloud's mom. Speaking of blocking mothers, Cloud listens to Elmira's request and leaves in the middle of the night, allowing us to get some alone time with our protagonist for the first time in what feels like forever.
Well, look who it is. Talk about a coincidence.
Okay, never mind. Can you tell how much the writers want you to get attached to Aerith yet? And can you tell that it's actually working very well? They work together to make it to Sector 7.
Yeah.
Alright, good enough. Yeah? Huh? Wait a minute, did you just...
Nope.
That moment when you've created such an emotionally distant character that seeing them high-five someone is one of the most cathartic moments in the game. Wait, why am I getting deja vu?
Teamwork.
They make it to the Sector 7 gate and are about to go their separate ways right when the gate opens up and a carriage carrying Tifa in a revealing dress that somehow covers more than her regular outfit appears. She says she's going to deal with Don Corneo, the boss of Wall Market, the name given to the Sector 6 slums. Wall Market is basically modern-day Las Vegas in the Prohibition era. Bright lights and lots of vice. And with that, Aerith convinces Cloud to go after Tifa and venture right into my least favorite part of the game. Don Corneo is hosting an audition to find his next wife, and Cloud was not invited because he was a guy. They won't let Aerith in either since, as they put it, kinda cute isn't enough for the Don.
Cloud, requesting permission to kill.
In order to enter, Aerith has to get the approval from at least one of 3 people. They lose a 2-face coin toss to Chocobo Sam, and the dancer, Andrea Rodea, isn't available, so they have to rely on masseuse Madam M, who will hear them out if Cloud gets a massage from her.
Is this how you like it? How about this? Or maybe this?
Good Lord, what is happening in there?
Do I even need to comment? They knew what they were doing. Madam M agrees to enter Aerith, but they'll need $1 million to pay for it. So she also enters them into the underground fighting tournament going on. There's 3 rounds with the odds progressively stacked against them, and then Don Corneo as a 4th round. The worst boss in the game, Hell House. It's basically Monster House in video game form, and it's just annoying. Their victory gets Madam M the million and the attention of Andrea. Cloud's told to do a bunch of random shit while Aerith gets ready until...
Ma'am.
Hey,
It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my life!
Fun fact, the dress Aerith wears in this scene could be one of 3 different dresses, and it all depends on how many side quests you do in the Sector 5 slums, with the one you see being the one she wears if you do all of them. And Tifa's dress is influenced by what outfit you said she'd look good in. What, you thought I pointed out that part of the game just to make a Bane joke? But the quotes fun doesn't end there, as Cloud needs a pass for himself to enter as he doesn't want Aerith going in alone. Luckily, Andrea has requested his presence, so Cloud heads to his club and... wait... what? What the fuck is happening? This is supposed to be a story about an emotionally jaded mercenary getting caught in an escalating battle between a corrupt government and an extremist group while struggling with the trauma of his past. Where does dancing fit into any of that?
No, I'm not sure about that one. I don't know if that checks out.
This is why I hate the wall market portion of this game. The pacing grinds to a screeching halt as Cloud is sent on a bunch of random bitch quests filled with random shit like an evil house and a dancing section, and then Cloud has to cross-dress to gain entry and I stop taking him seriously. They get in and reunite with Tifa, and we finally get to meet this Don Corneo we've heard so much about.
Ladies? Nice. Very nice.
Can we go back to when we never knew he existed? And yeah, everyone should be able to see where that joke is going the second Cloud was put in that dress.
Here's the gun. What? Here's the doctor's note. Just fucking do it. It's time.
At least Tifa and Aerith get their clothes back and kick some ass before rescuing Cloud and my sanity. Corneo reveals that he was paid by Shinra to find Barrett and that they are planning to drop the entirety of Midgar Sector 7 onto the Sector 7 slums to destroy it and wipe out Avalanche. He then plummets them down to the sewers because they were stupid morons standing on the obvious trapdoor. Oh, but at least we're finally done with that fucking city and I can give it the Bruno treatment. There's a boss fight against a sewer beast that smashes into a tunnel system, giving the trio a path to get back to Sector 7. The only notable part of this whole thing is that they get in a fight with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles if instead of being raised by a rat, they were raised by fucking crack. They emerge in a train graveyard, complete with actual ghosts. But I ain't afraid of no trains. I'm gonna be honest, a bunch of shit goes down here that I'm not even going to pretend to understand, and then they finally make it to Sector 7 as Avalanche defend themselves while Shinra and the Turks are attacking the pillar. Aerith gets captured by the Turks really fucking easily, while Cloud and Tifa climb the tower to see Biggs and Jesse die, and their deaths could have been impactful if it hadn't been like 10 hours since I saw them last. They meet up with Barrett on the roof, and Cloud has a rematch against Bruno and Rude. The third Turk, Sung, reveals that Aerith is something known as an ancient, and then our trio of heroes fuck right off as the plate falls and a random cat despairs. I mean, I know who that cat is, but he's never introduced or even seen again in this game, so he really has no point being here and there's no reason for me to go over him. There's a pretty good scene where Barrett thinks his daughter is dead, but it doesn't hit as hard since we know she's fine. Also, Sephiroth appears to Cloud once more and says he's an ancient just like Aerith. Huh. I wonder if those two will ever interact. They head off to Aerith's house, Marlene's most likely location, and to do so they cross through Wall Market. At Aerith's house, where Marlene is sleeping soundly, Elmira confirms that Aerith is an ancient and that she made a promise to Aerith's real mother as she died to take care of Aerith. She also reveals that the Ancients are believed to be the ones to take humans to the Promised Land, and that's why Shinra wanted her so badly. Cloud and company obviously aren't going to let that happen, though they first venture back to Sector 7 to see if there's any way they can help, which leads them into an underground Shinra facility like right beneath Wedge's house for some reason. The only thing of note down here are these weird emo creatures from the Black Lagoon lagoon monsters that turn out to be humans Shinra experimented on. They find Wedge and bring him to Aerith's house, and that night Cloud has a dream but not of Aerith.
Everyone dies eventually. But whatever happens, you can't fall in love with me.
Okay, first off, ouch. Second off, subtle. Someone give these writers a medal that only spoiled the whole fucking game. You may as well put a timer on Aerith's head now while you're at it, you moron! Okay, the writing isn't all bad. A key rule in writing is to never have characters say, I love you. You find ways for them to express it that's unique to them.
I have a motorcycle, and you know what? It is the purest form of freedom. Since I met you, I've been thinking about getting a car.
And how does Cloud respond to Aerith's friend-zoning declaration?
Do I get a say in all this?
For a character as out of touch with his emotions as Cloud, this is the best they could have done. The three set out the next morning to rescue Aerith and come across Kyrie Kanan. Kanan? I don't care. She's 17, by the way, so this close-up of her ass isn't appreciated. Anyway, Kyrie here is voiced by Erica Harlacher, who has just been in a bunch of stuff. Kyrie is the main character of a Final Fantasy spin-off, and her appearance here is basically a plate of member berries. And yes, the fact that her name is pronounced Kyrie instead of Kyrie does bother me to no end. But I guess we'll have to wait a bit longer for the game with a confusing-ass plot and a character named Kyrie. Anyway, the next batch of side quests are introduced, and in order to find a way up to Midgar, they head to Don Corneo!
Oh, okay.
They track him through the sewers with help from his bodyguard Leslie, who has been looking to get revenge on Corneo ever since he picked Leslie's fiancée to be his bride and she went missing the next day. Sadly, Corneo escapes before we can stick a foot so far of his ass's teeth turn brown, but Leslie steals some grappling hooks for them to use. They climb up to Midgar and enter the Shinra building. Highlights include Tifa being a more attractive Nathan Drake, climbing 59 flights of stairs in real time, I repeat, climbing 59 flights of stairs in real measured time, exploring the Shinra Propagandaseum, and meeting with the mayor of Midgar, Mayor Domino. The mayor reveals that he's been covering their tracks as he's upset that Shinra has taken his power away and reduced him to nothing more than a glorified librarian. We also get introduced to Professor Hojo, the head of Shinra's Science and Research Division.
Hair, skin, organs, every fragment of every bone. As breathtaking in death as in life. As you, my dear. Ifalna was elegance, right down to her cellular structure.
Oh no! Cloud and Tifa John McClane their way into overseeing a meeting between all the Shinra head honchos. There's ones we've already met like President Shinra, Heidegger, Hojo, and Scarlet, along with two more that haven't had any real importance. There's Reeve, who secretly doesn't agree with Shinra's methods, and Palmer, who saw Sephiroth walking in the hallway, though no one will believe him. Palmer is voiced by William Salyers, last seen on the channel as Dr. Otto Octavius in Marvel's Spider-Man. The meeting is adjourned and they catch up to Hojo, using him to get to the research lab where they're greeted by Cthulhu of all things. They make quick work of him and resume their chase after Hojo.
No, not quite. Oh, now I recall. My memory was mistaken. My boy, you weren't a soldier.
What? What is this fascinating phenomenon?
Wow, those things just do whatever the plot demands of them, huh? Anyway, they save Aerith and... There's like 2 hours left and they're still introducing new characters! This talking lion wolf thing is Red 13, the designation given to him by Hojo, and he's voiced by Max Middleman, who has also been in just about everything you can imagine. Cloud has another vision and passes out after saying Genova and Mother, waking up in Aerith's own room, where she once again confirms that she's an ancient.
I'm a descendant of the ancients. That's pretty much it, really. Oh. But just so you know, that's not their actual name. They called themselves the Cetra.
How many of you just thought I mispronounced Central earlier? We also get some more exposition about how those Spectre things are called Whispers, and how they prevent anyone from altering destiny. And also there's a threat much bigger than Shinra, as if the big man with the big hair and the big sword didn't make that obvious enough. The mayor reaches out to them, now joined by Wedge, and instructs them to reach the roof to be extracted. This takes them down for some reason, where they see Genova and Sephiroth. Sephiroth calling Genova Mother. There's a very long and very boring sequence whispers where not a single noteworthy thing happens, and then they arrive at the roof where the president of Shinra is stabbed by Sephiroth, the super evil Jenova-style monster clone jerk-off. He also stabs Barrett, and then the rest of the team is transported somewhere else and have to fight Jenova Dreamweaver, an illusion of Jenova caused by its ability to project false images to its victims.
Great. I think I got it, but just in case, tell me the whole thing again, I wasn't listening.
They defeat the Dreamweaver and see the Whispers save Barrett as that's not his destiny. Then we see this. Yeah, so those weird guys with the numbers from earlier are Sephiroth clones that the real Sephiroth's life force can take control of, and that body he was holding is Jenova from earlier. We're then introduced to Rufus Shinra, President Shinra's son. Cloud promptly beats the shit out of him, there's a vehicle section out of nowhere, we cut to some random guy with Cloud's sword named Zack, and we are finally at the end of the game as our heroes cross the barrier of Whispers to fight Destiny and Sephiroth. The fight against the Whispers is annoying, and the fight against Sephiroth is ridiculously hard if you haven't mastered this game's combat, and the added element of luck makes it even worse. The fight starts as just Sephiroth versus Cloud, and as it progresses, two of Cloud's partners will join him. However, it's completely random what two partners are chosen, and you better hope one of them is a healer, preferably Aerith, but the annoyance doesn't stop there. Sephi will relentlessly target whichever party member you are currently in control of, so you have to constantly switch between them and try to get in attacks wherever you can. I'm not entirely mad that this is the hardest fight in the game, as the final boss should be the toughest, but it's a huge mountain to climb for the more casual players. With Sephiroth temporarily defeated, he takes Cloud to the edge of creation, 7 seconds before the end. Then we get a denouement where we see an injured Zack carry an injured Cloud past modern Cloud and his allies as they all agree to venture into the unknown and find a way to stop Sephiroth once and for all. We also see Rufus take the position of president, and we see that Biggs is still alive. Remember him? I barely do! And for now, that is the simple plot of the Final Fantasy VII Remake. This game is, fittingly, a game of two halves. Everything from the opening to the entrance to Wall Market is very fun, engaging, interesting, and exciting. Then shit hits the fan and smacks right into a brick wall at fucking Mach 10 speed and only gets worse from there. The final hours in the Shinra building were so painful, mainly because so many other aspects of the game felt drawn out as well, especially the side quests. I made a brief comment on this earlier, but legit every single cutscene goes on for longer than it should, and it gets really annoying after your patience has been shoved through a cheese grater. The combat in this game is fun, though some fights are ridiculously tough out of nowhere, while others are incredibly easy. I'm much better at turn-based RPGs as I have time to plan out a strategy, so playing a real-time strategy RPG was a fun change of pace, though that does mean I struggled quite a bit. I can't fault the game for my skill level though. And there is an easy mode for newer players. By far the strongest aspects of this game are the graphics and the characters, even if some of their designs are questionable. Every environment looks incredible, unique, and detailed, and the character designs mix the traditional expressive anime style with realism to create a wholly original look that makes every character stand out. While Cloud comes off as a dick at first when working with Avalanche, you really get to see that he is a good person, especially when interacting with Tifa and Aerith. Tifa, I'm split on. Half of me is pro Tifa, the other half is anti-Tifa. Phrasing. I like how her more energetic nature contrasts with Cloud's and how they express their care for one another in very different ways. They make no effort to hide that Tifa loves him, but it works so the character as emotionally moronic as Cloud. I really liked Aerith at the beginning, though her vague statements about the dreariness of the future and how the writers made no effort to hide what's coming in part 2 for those who don't know definitely knocked her down a few pegs. I mostly like her for being the only character to dress normally, even if it's not entirely fit for combat. And finally, Barrett. I ended up liking Barrett a lot more than I expected. He starts off as a stereotypical loud and rough leader, though we get to see that he genuinely cares for his team and believes what he's fighting for. His daughter Marlene goes a long way in making him a more grounded character as you understand why he wants to create a better planet for the future. Also, Tifa telling him that Jesse and Biggs returned to the planet and him responding with "they were supposed to return to us" just hits me different. It doesn't have the same impact with the reveal that Biggs somehow survived, but it's still half effective. I didn't particularly care for any of the other Avalanche members or Red 13 as they barely got any screen time, but I didn't actively dislike them. Then there's Sephiroth. How can a villain be so good and so dog shit terrible at the same time? He looks, sounds, and feels like a threat every time he's on screen, but he doesn't do anything for 95% of the game except mess with Cloud's head. And the fact that this game sets up so much confusion around anything and barely provides any answers does him no favors. The main issue is the fact that this is half a game. No matter how much they stretched it out, it was always going to be half a game. I would have much preferred a 100+ hour epic that covered the entirety of the original instead of milking everything they could out of the worst half of the game and charging full price for it. The final score for Final Fantasy VII Remake is a 6 out of 10. As much as I wanted to give it a 7 for the match, this game rests just above average but not much higher. And yes, I know there's the intermission DLC in the PS5 Intergrade version of the remake, but I'll probably attach a review of that to my inevitable review of Part 2 when that comes out, as the main character of the DLC, Yuffie Kisaragi, who also doesn't dress properly for combat and it really fucking bothers me, will eventually join Cloud's team. Ooh, spoilers. So while Cloud and friends get ready to prevent the end of the world, what would happen if the world did end, and you were one of the last people left? How would you cope? How would you bond? How would you survive? I hope to see you there. Did anyone even play this fucking game?